All week, New York One is taking a close look at the path to power travel by Congressman Hakeem Jeffries of New York and his rapid climb up the political ladder to succeed Nancy Pelosi as a House Democratic leader. The third installment of our series, we examine his legislative record and the forces that shaped it. Is a story that begins in Brooklyn. Our Kevin Frey reports from Washington.
It's just a great thing to see a young man grow up in our community and get to that point in life.
Like Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Beverly Brooks Kirkland lives in Brooklyn and attends Cornerstone Baptist Church, where Jeffries has been a lifelong member. Her excitement over Jeffries becoming the first person of color to lead a major party in Congress is not just about local or racial pride. It's also about this community having a powerful voice in Washington.
I'm happy for him. I'm happy for us.
These Brooklyn streets help to shape Jeffries, his politics, and the issues he champions. His district carves a U through the borough, Coney Island at one end, Bed-Stuy at the other. It's home to both Tony Brownstone neighborhoods and sprawling public housing developments. Jeffries grew up in nearby Crown Heights as crack cocaine use surged. And then, while in law school, he worked at a legal clinic, helping young people from Brooklyn in trouble with the law.
We were handling cases in the very community that he grew up in and neighboring communities. And he showed innate empathy for the people in the community and the kinds of things that caused people to get involved in the criminal legal system and made it so hard for them to succeed.
These experiences, Jeffries says, led him to focus on criminal justice reform in the state assembly and later in Congress.
I think over time it did inform that if I had the opportunity to go into the practice of law or eventually public service, that I wanted to do something about the broken criminal justice system that clearly existed, the mass incarceration, and the prison industrial complex.
In Albany, Jeffries helped to end so-called prison gerrymandering, the practice of counting inmates as residents of the towns where they are incarcerated instead of where they came from.
The prior system was unfair, unjust, and undemocratic.
He also sponsored legislation taking aim at the NYPD's controversial stop and frisk program, banning the collection of personal information from those stopped but not charged with a crime.
He worked on the issue of stop and frisk before it was popular to do so.
In Congress, Jeffries teamed up with Georgia Republican Doug Collins in 2018 to pass sweeping reforms of the federal prison system. The First Step Act eased mandatory minimum federal sentences, expanded early releases, and ended some draconian practices, such as the shackling of women inmates giving birth.
He was even able to get one of the few bills through during the dark ages of the former president of the United States.
There have been some letdowns, too. Jeffries has so far been unable to pass into law a bill ending the sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine, a disparity that disproportionately harms black Americans. Jeffries also has struggled to corral enough support on Capitol Hill to ban police chokeholds, legislation he introduced after Eric Garner died while being arrested by the NYPD. Jeffries' ability to get things done will get even harder now that Republicans are the majority party in the House. Reflecting back, Jeffries says he was pleasantly surprised when Republicans joined in on the First Step Act and would like to see if they could now do more.
It's my hope that we can continue to lean into bipartisan negotiations as it relates to right-sizing our criminal justice system and making sure that we can elevate public safety.
He says he will work with Republicans when possible, but push back on what he labels extremism. Former Congressman Bob Goodlatte, a Republican, remembers working with Jeffries to modernize music copyright laws for the streaming age. Goodlatte says crafting the bill required balancing input from several competing parties.
One of the best skills a legislator can have is to be willing to communicate with anybody in a constructive way about how to get things done. And that's exactly the approach that he's taken.
Some Republicans now in Congress are skeptical of their ability to work with him.
I think the Democrats picked someone that's in line with their ideology up here. He's very far left.
Others, at least so far, are not entirely writing him off.
I have served with Hakeem Jeffries in the New York State Assembly. I've always found him to be a straight-up individual who is willing to listen and have a conversation. I hope he keeps that.
Maybe he is now. We would finally have a reasonable leader of the Democratic Party that wouldn't be so partisan, and maybe he is somebody we could work with. That remains to be seen.
Back in Brooklyn, Jeffries' constituents are counting on him to work for them.
We need someone like him to be able to bring something more to the community, which I think he can.
In Brooklyn, Kevin Frey, New York 1.